Shaka Zulu, relentless king who forged an empire. Shaka Zulu was the most powerful king in southern Africa during the pre-colonial period. During the reign of King Shaka, 1816 to 1828, the Zulu became the mightiest military force, increasing their land holdings from 100 square miles to 11,500 square miles. Today, the figure of Shaka is revered as a symbol of courage, determination, and endurance in South African history. For the first time, the legendary 19th century King Zulus gathered tribal factions together, forming a powerful kingdom with a strong sense of identity. Shaka's reign was chaotic and, according to some accounts, harsh, yet he left a lasting legacy. At the time, the Zulu were a regional tribe relying on pastoral livestock, sorghum, and milk. He is one of history's most electrifying monarchs, transformed a small clan into a fearsome empire. He ordered wide-reaching reforms that reorganized the military into a formidable force. Shaka was born around 1787, near what is now Melmoth in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. His father was Senzanga Kona, chief of a small Zulu clan, and his mother was Nandi, a woman from the neighboring Langini clan. Their relationship was not formally recognized by marriage, and after Shaka's birth, he and his mother suffered social stigma and rejection. When he was still young, Shaka and Nandi were forced to live with the Langeni and later with the powerful Ndwandwe people under Chief Dingiswayo. Growing up, Shaka was subjected to hardships, bullying, and exclusion, experiences that hardened him. When Inkosi Dingiswayo discovered Shaka was royalty, he put him in charge of a regiment, helping to develop Shaka's military tactics and strategy. After Nkosi's Wide, the king of the Ndwandwe nation, murdered Dingiswayo, Shaka sought to avenge his death. During that encounter, Zwide's mother, Ntombazi, a Sangoma, was killed by Shaka. He chose a particularly gruesome revenge on her by locking her in a house with jackals or hyenas inside. They devoured her, and in the morning, Shaka burned the house to the ground. Shaka continued his pursuit of Zwide. It was not until around 1825 that the two military leaders met in the vicinity of Pongola, near the present-day border of Mpumalanga, a province of South Africa. Shaka was victorious in battle, although his forces sustained heavy casualties, including his military commander Mgobhozi Ovela Ntabane. Already at this time, Shaka had grown famous for his use of the short stabbing spear. It was deadly and easy to thrust, whereas before, tribesmen barely tried to customize or improve their weapons. Shaka's innovative tactics, among them the bullhorn, devastated Zwide's forces at the Battle of Gakokli Hill. Shaka revolutionized Zulu warfare. He abandoned the traditional throwing spear, inventing the brutal short stabbing spear, the ikawa, and introducing the larger, more robust war shield. His regiments, barefoot and battle-hardened, could march 80 kilometers a day, striking with terrifying speed. Between 1818 and 1828, Shaka created a Zulu empire, smashing rival tribes and absorbing their survivors into his growing legions. His reign brought about the Mfecane, the crushing, a tidal wave of chaos, migration, and new kingdoms across southern Africa. Yet, Shaka was more than a conqueror. Through diplomacy, strategic marriages, and patronage, he forged bonds with neighboring chiefs, weaving together a powerful coalition. His genius lay not only in bloodshed but also in statesmanship. Despite myths and exaggerations, modern historians agree Shaka changed warfare in Africa forever. Whether viewed as a genius nation-builder or a ruthless tyrant, Shaka remains a towering figure, Africa's own Napoleon, a man whose life story crackles with energy, ambition, tragedy, and an undying impact. Shaka was both feared and admired, Shaka centralized power. Chiefs were appointed directly by him, reducing the power of traditional clan elders. Tribes under Zulu control had to contribute warriors and tributes. Shaka also implemented ritualized warfare, battles sometimes staged to minimize bloodshed among loyal subjects. Shaka's hegemony was primarily based on military might, smashing rivals and incorporating scattered remnants into his own army. He supplemented this with a mixture of diplomacy and patronage, incorporating friendly chieftains, including Zilandlo of the Imkhazi, Job of the Sithole, and Mathuban of the Thuli. These people were never defeated in battle by the Zulus. They did not have to be. Shaka won them over with subtler tactics, such as patronage and reward. As for the ruling of Kwabe, they began reinventing their genealogies to give the impression that Kwabe and Zulu were closely related, i.e., as Nguni in the past. In this way, a greater sense of cohesion was created, though it never became complete as subsequent civil wars attest. The Zulu people had to retreat before several Ndwandwe incursions. The Ndwandwe was clearly the most aggressive grouping in the sub-region. Shaka was able to form an alliance with the leaders of the Mthithwa peoples and was able to establish himself amongst the Kwabe after Pakathwayo was overthrown with relative ease. With Kwabe, Hlubi, and Mkhize support, Shaka was finally able to summon a force capable of resisting the Ndwandwe. Shaka's first major battle against Zwide of the Ndwandwe was the Battle of Gokli Hill on the Mfolozi River. Shaka's troops maintained a strong position on the crest of the hill. A frontal assault by their opponents failed to dislodge them, and Shaka sealed the victory by sending his reserve forces in a sweep around the hill to attack the enemy's rear. Losses were high overall, but the efficiency of the new Shakan innovations was proven. It is probable that over time, the Zulus were able to hone and improve their encirclement tactics. Another decisive battle eventually took place on the Mslatuz River, at the confluence with the Mvuzane stream. In the two-day running battle, the Zulus inflicted a resounding defeat on their opponents. Shaka then led a fresh reserve some 110 kilometers to the royal kraal of Zwide, ruler of the Ndwandwe, and destroyed it. Zwide himself escaped with a handful of followers before falling afoul of a chieftain named Yanji, ruler of a Babelu clan. He died in mysterious circumstances soon afterwards. Zwide's general, Soshangan of the Shangan, moved north towards what is now Mozambique, to inflict further damage on less resistant foes and take advantage of slaving opportunities, obliging Portuguese traders to pay tribute. Shaka later had to contend again with Zwide's son, Sikunyan, in 1826. Shaka granted permission to Europeans to enter Zulu territory on rare occasions. In the mid-1820s, Henry Francis Finn provided medical treatment to the king after an assassination attempt by a rival tribe member hidden in a crowd. To show his gratitude, Shaka permitted European settlers to enter and operate in the Zulu kingdom. Shaka observed several demonstrations of European technology and knowledge, but he held that the Zulu way was superior to that of the foreigners. Shaka organized various grades into regiments and quartered them in special military kraals, with regiments having their own distinctive names and insignia. The regimental system clearly built on existing tribal cultural elements that could be adapted and shaped to fit an expansionist agenda. Shaka created ruthless determination in his army by instilling in his warriors the knowledge of what would happen if their courage failed them in battle or their regiments were defeated. A brutal fate awaited them and their families if they did not perform well in combat. As Shaka conquered a tribe, he enrolled its remnants in his army so that they might in their turn help to conquer others. He armed his regiments with the short-stabbing Ikalwa, instead of the throwing assegai which they had been accustomed to use, and kept them subject to an iron discipline. If a man was observed to show the slightest hesitation about coming to close quarters with the enemy, he was executed as soon as the fight was over. If a regiment had the misfortune to be defeated, whether by its own fault or not, it would on its return to headquarters find that a goodly proportion of the wives and children belonging to it had been beaten to death on Shaka's orders, and that he was waiting their arrival to complete his vengeance by dashing out their brains. The result was that though Shaka's armies were occasionally defeated, they were rarely annihilated, and they never ran away. The expanding Zulu power inevitably clashed with European hegemony in the decades after Shaka's death. In fact, European travelers to Shaka's kingdom demonstrated advanced technology such as firearms and writing, but the Zulu monarch was less than convinced. There was no need to record messages he held, since his messengers stood under penalty of death should they bear inaccurate tidings. As for firearms, Shaka acknowledged their utility as missile weapons after seeing muzzleloaders demonstrated, but he argued that in the time a gunman took to reload, he would be swamped by charging spear-wielding warriors. The first major clash after Shaka's death took place under his successor Ndwandwe against expanding European voortrekkers from the Cape. Initial Zulu success rested on fast-moving surprise attacks and ambushes, but the voortrekkers recovered and dealt the Zulu a severe defeat from their fortified wagon laager at the Battle of Blood River. However, after the death of his beloved mother Nandi in 1827, Shaka's rule grew dark. Grief-stricken and increasingly brutal, he became feared as much by his own people as by his enemies. His assassins, his half-brothers, ended his reign in 1828, but his legacy refused to die. The figure of Shaka thus remains an ambiguous one in African oral tradition, defying simplistic depictions of the Zulu king as a heroic protean nation-builder on one hand or a depraved monster on the other. This ambiguity continues to lend the image of Shaka its continued power and influence, almost 2 centuries after his death. For more videos on history content like, comment and subscribe. See you in next one.